The wine that we're going to talk about, the kind of wine that Sebastian makes, is a wine that we're positioning, we're introducing into the market because it's so different from the commercial Lambrusco that has a foothold.
Yeah, so I guess what you mean by commercial Lambrusco is, I don't know if you are old enough or our listeners are old enough to recall Riuniti on Ice. That's nice. I kind of still remember that. So that's what we're talking about, right? When you're saying commercial.
Welcome to this special Clubhouse session of the Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as members of the Italian wine community engage in fascinating conversations about contemporary wine topics. If you enjoyed the show, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. And remember to subscribe and rate the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your pods.
Okay, hello everybody. My name's Stevie Kim and welcome to the Italian Wine Club on Clubhouse. Ciao Larissa.
Ciao Stevie.
How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
So this is your first time. You're a Clubhouse virgin, right?
That's right. That's right.
Larissa Lawrence. Larissa Lawrence is calling, I believe, today from Mexico City. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh my goodness. When was the last time I saw you?
It would be
Marque,
almost 1 year ago in Le Marque.
Crazy, right? That was a crazy Gita Scholastica. So
it was great.
Yeah, Larissa Lawrence, of course, she is the co-founder of Vinos Enteros, a Mexico City-based wine importing and distribution company. At the time, I think last year, you were just kind of starting that, right?
We've been at it for a while, for about 5 years now. But what happened right when I went to Le Marque was that I left my full-time corporate job and became 100% focused on Vinos Enteros.
And how is that going?
It's been wonderful. We've almost doubled the business in the last year. So things are really growing at a good clip now.
So tell me a little bit about Vinos Enteros. What type of portfolio have you collected so far?
Yeah, we have 24 producers, and we're actually just adding our 25th with a container that just arrived late last month. And our focus is exclusively on artisanal producers. All of our producers are Italian, or rather, they're based in Italy. As you'll find, one of our producers is not Italian, and we really love to showcase autochthonous varietals and all of the rich differences that you find in the various regions that produce wine across Italy. And so small production, autochthonous varietals, wines that really have a strong sense of place and that are made by families.
You have many, of course, qualification as a wine expert, but the most important thing, of course, is the Vinitaly International Academy. You are our bona fide Italian wine ambassador. I remember you did the session in New York and you were extremely pregnant.
That's right.
I remember I was like, there's a pregnant woman. That was the first time actually we had a pregnant woman. I was like, I hope she's going to be okay. Did you sip the wines at all?
I most certainly did the practical tasting. Yeah. And I passed. I passed that exam.
I know. You passed with flying colors. So tell us who you're going to call today on your Italian Wine Club today on the Clubhouse.
Yeah, today we have the pleasure of speaking with a great producer by the name of Sebastian Van de Sype.
Yeah, and I was wondering how to pronounce that. Van de Sype. So Y is long. Okay.
That's right.
So tell us why you've chosen Sebastian to be on your call today.
So we have a lot of great producers in our portfolio, and I feel such a strong kind of passion and desire to share their stories because they all have incredible stories, and we know all of them personally. But there's something about Sebastian that really has just stuck with me, and so what I wanted to do is to give him a platform to share his philosophy, to talk about the work that he's doing with Lambrusco Grappa Rossa and to kind of challenge, I think, some of these preconceived notions that most of us have, including myself, frankly, when it comes to Lambrusco. There's just such a great story, as we'll get into, in terms of the region and also Sebastian's work. And I think that it's a really kind of unique and fun way of resetting a little bit how we all think about this particular region. And so I wanted to share that experience that I've had with him through his wines with the rest of the community.
Excellent. And he doesn't sound very Italian, Sebastian Van de Sype.
That's right. That's right. He's an expat living in Italy, and we'll get into his story, his biography a little bit. It's a really interesting and unusual one. Definitely not kind of your typical generational winemaker story.
Okay. So, as you know, we get a little bit geeky around here. What are the learning objectives that we should be expecting from your call today with Sebastian?
So, what I wanted to do with this call was really to kind of focus on 3 key points through the conversation. And so, what I'm hoping to leave listeners with is, number 1, a really strong kind of cultural understanding of Lambrusco. Number 2, I want for people to be able to articulate and understand what is distinct and unique about this wine region and also about this family of grapes relative to the other regions and the grapes that we love in Italy.
I wanted to ask you if Lambrusco is popular in Mexico.
I guess I would say, simply put, yes, to a certain extent. There's an understanding of kind of the most commercial versions of Lambrusco. Rionite is, of course, the brand that we all know. Our clients, that kind of the caliber of restaurants that we work with, the types of private clients that we have, are not that segment of the Mexican market that would be buying a commercial Lambrusco. And so it's been an interesting journey to introduce them to a completely different kind of sparkling wine from Emilia. And so that wine, the wine that we're going to talk about, the kind of wine that Sebastian makes, is a wine that we're positioning, we're introducing into the market because it's so different from the commercial Lambrusco that has a foothold.
Yeah, so I guess what you mean by commercial Lambrusco is, I don't know if you are old enough or our listeners are old enough to recall Riuniti on Ice. That's nice. I kind of still remember that. So that's what we're talking about, right? When you're saying commercial wine.
That's the very one. Yeah.
Okay. All righty. All right. So this is what's going to happen, Larissa. I'm going to mute my mic. So you have to take fully advantage because that rarely happens. And then, and the mic, I will turn over the mic over to you, and then perhaps come back towards the end of the hour to see if there are any questions. Okay?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Alrighty.
Okay. Sebastian, do we have you on the line right now?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Larissa. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. Okay, let me give a bit of an introduction before we get started and jump into questions so that our listeners have a sense of who you are and your background. So today we have the distinct pleasure of speaking with Sebastian Van de Sype. And as I mentioned earlier to Stevie, Sebastian has a really fascinating background. So he holds a master's degree in aerospace engineering, an engineer by trade. He has been in business and specifically in F1 engineering for over 10 years before he decided to get into winemaking. So he and his wife, Mary, made a very conscious decision many years ago to embark full-time on this project. And they started their winery officially in 2020. And it's based in Emilia, very close to Modena in Castelvetro. And that was the year that they made their first vintage. So just now getting into the 4th year of making wine. And it's been quite an evolution since they bought their vineyards and have been making their wine. And Sebastian was working in the region for several years before they started this project. And he started to really fall in love with wine and the gastronomy of Emilia-Romagna, and found that Lambrusco in particular was very inspiring to him. But ultimately, he traces back the spark that kind of ignited his interest all of the way back to his childhood. He has a family that is very culinarily oriented, and they have a family credo that I love, which is taste thoroughly and choose quality over quantity. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Hi, Larissa. I'm fine, thank you. Very good. Happy to be here.
Great. So obviously your bio is just so fascinating, from F1 engineer to winemaker. Can you tell us a little bit more about some points that perhaps I didn't touch on? Where you're from? Obviously, we know that you don't have an Italian last name, what you studied, a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, sure. I was born in Belgium, in Ghent, and I moved to Italy actually when I was 22, 23 years old for the first time, before moving back for a short period to Belgium, where I got married and got two kids as well. And then in 2014, I came back to Italy to my first passion, because in the meantime I had started a business also over there in Belgium. And in 14, I had the big opportunity to come back to Formula One here in Maranello, and actually embarked on our, let's say, definitive travel into the Italian culture with my whole family, so my wife and my two kids. And so yes, I was working very hard in Formula One, which is a very totalizing job. It takes away all of your time, and I, obviously being in Emilia, I got in touch with a lot of the culinary special things that we have here. But also me, even having grown up in within the wine business, if you want, for me Lambrusco was something that I didn't even know, or at least didn't appreciate like a lot of people, because I just didn't know it. And then let's say that in 2017-18 I started to re-embark on some of my dreams that I had when I was in my early 20s, that I wanted to, let's say, finish my life on a vineyard. But at that point I was only 35 years old, so I thought maybe I should not wait until I'm 50. I should do it earlier and start the winery. Obviously, it took some convincing also of my wife in the beginning. So it was really changing the way we lived up until that point. And just to go a bit deeper on why we chose this region, obviously because we were living already here, and we were. I was convinced that we could make something beautiful out of the beauty that we had here in our territory. But also I think that Lambrusco was really underappreciated. The value of the territory was not reflected in what Lambrusco was in the market, or how it is perceived, at least in the market. So I also saw a big opportunity to try to do something nice and good and honest and genuine in this on this particular product. So that's how we started it, our journey in this Lambrusco winemaking, let's say.
So, Sebastian, I imagine that a lot of people daydream and they fantasize about growing olive on a winery, as you mentioned. What do you think is that kind of X factor that drives somebody to actually successfully convince their family to make this dramatic shift and to do it How do you how do you think that happened? What is it within you or within your family that allowed this to actually be realized?
The answer to that question is very layered. Obviously, it's not one moment in time that you decide I'm going to do this. It's a process, but I think you need a couple of things. First of all, is a passion that is bigger than your ratio or your mind allows. So you need to be a bit crazy to do this, especially coming from a job that is well paid and very stable and everything you want. You go into a world that is completely where the force, for example, nature is stronger than we are as men. So you need to start to accept that. Being an engineer, that is very difficult because you're used to being in control of everything. So one of the first things I had to let go of is me wanting to control everything. So that's important to understand that, even though you don't understand that when you start. It's something that you learn as you go. Secondly, I think you need to passion that keeps you going needs to be combined with an entrepreneurial ID, with a vision, with not wanting to make money on the short term, because in wine business that's impossible. But still have an entrepreneurial vision of where you want to go. And then thirdly, it's impossible. I think it's difficult to do this alone. It's not impossible, but I was lucky not having personnel or anybody. I was lucky to be able to convince Mary as well to join me in this adventure. And in the difficult moments, you try to understand where you are. You look at the nature around you, look at the product that you've made, and there's still a big margin to improve. But as long as products are genuine, for me, it's important. And then, as a last note, maybe for me, I always saw it as a logical step as a person, because it combines the two parts of my personality, which on the one hand is very engineer-like, and on the other hand has a big sensitivity for good, nice, beautiful things. So that is where I can put both of those things together, especially in the natural wine business. Maybe we can come back to that later. I think natural wine and engineering goes very well together, because you focus on the process, not so much on the chemics or on the industrial side, but more on the process of how to make a nice and good and genuine product.
I love that. Yeah, we'll definitely explore a bit more sort of the poetry and the quantitative orientation of winemaking with a natural hand. But first, let's kind of paint a picture for people who are listening. For those who haven't been, or even for those who have, I'd love to hear in your words a little bit about the geography of the region, and specifically where you're located in the hills of Modena. And one question that I have for you more specifically that I'd love for you to touch on as you talk about the geography is a little bit about sort of the Emilia-Romagna division merge, and kind of what that is based upon, with the history and the sort of the rationale around the relationship between Emilia and Romagna is.
But Emilia-Romagna is the current region where we are based, and it's divided actually between Emilia and Romagna, which is around Bologna, which is the capital, if you want, for the region. So Bologna is, if you want, where the Po plains finish, and the boot really starts going down. So it's still north of Italy, but or considered as being Italy. But it's where the Apennines start, the backbone of the boot of Italy, and that actually geographically is the interesting thing, because we are in the hillside. We are actually on the where the Apennines, so the mountain backbone of Italy, start. We are at the north of Bologna, so we are in the Emilian part of Emilia-Romagna, while Romagna more goes to the Adriatic coast. And there are, as Italy is is a very young country, if you want. So every city-state actually has their own habits and their own culture. I think Emilia and Romagna is really well known in the world as being a very culinary region. It's very agricultural. Parmigiano Reggiano, aceto balsamico, the tortellini, all the let's say the more heavy and nice and creamy pastas come from this region. It's been a very prosperous region as well because of the agriculture. So that is where we are located, and it is not considered as a big wine region because of the things that we will explore in this podcast. But I think there's a lot of opportunity, and especially the difference between the hillsides and the plains offer different varietals of Lambrusco grapes, so different Lambrusco grapes, because Lambrusco is actually a family of grapes, and it's very interesting to dive into that culture if you want.
Yeah, so let's continue that thread. Can you talk a little bit about Lambrusco as a vine and the differences between I don't even know, are they considered to be clones? Are they sufficiently distinct so as to be considered varieties if we're talking about Lambrusco Grasparosa and Lambrusco Sorbara and the others?
Yeah, specifically in the region around Modena, which is the city, just the first big city above Bologna or north of Bologna. We have the Sorbara in the plains, and we have Grasparosa in the hills, so where we are located. Then you have Salamino and several other varietals, sub-varietals of Lambrusco, which is actually a series or a family of varietal that is historically called as being wild grapes, so Selvatica. And they actually that is what the Lambrusco family, if you look at the pedigree of the grapes, Lambrusco actually is a sub varietal of or subfamily that belongs to the wild grape families. But you have a lot of locally you have differences that are being appreciated. For example, Sorbara is more on the acidity, while the Grasparosa is a bit more with body and still some nice acidity, but is a bit more round. And then Salamino is rarely done in a 100% varietal, so it's mainly used to cut into the other varietals.
Okay, and you mentioned that Lambrusco was originally a wild vine. Who was it who domesticated it, and was it the Etruscans, the Romans? Who and when approximately did that happen?
I can be sure that Virgil already wrote about Lambrusca around the Mutina, which is Modena, the old name of Modena. So we at least go back more than 2,000 years in the Roman era. There is also some history that claims that the Etruscans already had those varietals, because it was really varietals that grew on the sides of the fields, of the agricultural fields, and they picked berries to make the first wines, and they were bottled, if you like, at the end of winter as a sweet still wine, and then when springtime arrived, they became sparkling because the fermentation started again with the temperatures rising. So like many good things in the world, it was more like it became a sparkling wine as a more out of a coincidence rather than a big study in that period. So to answer your question, I think at least we are sure that it goes back to the Romans, and there is some history that claims that it goes back even further. So we're talking about a history more than 2,000, 3,000 years.
Wow. Wow. So I was showing one of your wines yesterday to some clients, and I said that I feel like the story of Lambrusco could be a Greek tragedy. So we're talking about a grape variety that's one of the oldest in Italy, right? 2,000 to 3,000 years old. One of the most iconic regions with all of these just kind of larger than life Italian products, right? Aceto balsamico, parmigiano, reggiano, just amazing, amazing stuff. Prosciutto di Parma. Obviously, there was incredible international success of Lambrusco if we think about the 70s. I believe it was actually the top selling Italian wine in the United States, where I'm from, for quite some time. And yet, we find ourselves struggling, right, to deal with some misconceptions. So it's like on the heels of all of this amazing, incredible impact, Lambrusco is kind of a victim of its own success. So could you just walk us through in your own words how you kind of tell the story of Lambrusco and what that trajectory has been?
Yes, sure. I want to make one thing clear. I think the big Riunite and the Cantine Sociale did a lot of good things for the name of Lambrusco, but as you said, they became victim of their own success, especially because it ended to be considered as a wine and more as a drink. And I think that is the biggest thing that we are trying to put aside and behind us, and reintroduce Lambrusco as being a proper wine that has quality levels, that has a lot of nuance to it in the way you make it, in the way you present it. Because we make we make sparkling wine, which is a technique that is not the easiest. So there are a lot of nuances in that winemaking process that also let the end product be different between different producers. So I think that the what happened in the 70s and the 80s, and especially the big marketing efforts around it and the industrialization with pressure tanks and méthode Charmat and everything, that allowed to make the sparkling wine in very high volumes and sell it at a very low price. As it often happens, that quantity pushed the quality a bit to the background, and it forced also the wine, not only the winemakers but also the grape growers, to always push and push and push more their plants, their vineyards, and that always goes at the cost of good quality. So I think since the 70s, 80s of the last century until now, even there's a lot of battle between who wants to make quantity and who wants to make quality.
And how do you navigate that in different markets? I know this is something that we've talked about in terms of positioning in the Mexican market. But do you find that it's more helpful to kind of lean into the history of Lambrusco, own kind of the regional history, challenge the misconceptions, or do you prefer to position yourself really as kind of a unique product? You're making a high quality sparkling wine, you're based in Emilia. How do you navigate that?
It's I think the most difficult question to answer, because it is something that is continuously on my mind. I'm very proud from the beginning. I'm very proud of what we are trying to achieve. I'm proud being here in Emilia. I'm proud to being able to say, this is also Lambrusco. You don't need to only take the sweet, cheap stuff. So I'm very proud of all that. I do see that we need to tune our message to the markets in a proper way. So there are markets that just cannot move away from the preconception of what Lambrusco is. It needs to be sweet. It needs to be cheap. It needs to be all of that. Obviously there I cannot I cannot win the battle on the short term, at least. by saying, yes, but this is a product that is not sweet, not cheap, but it's still Lambrusco. So on the other hand, there I do focus on what I think also, and it's something I learned to do a bit better with respect to, let's say, the first 2 years. Having really specialized in the ancestrale method, the rifermentato, the disgorgement, we just also in a very honest way present a sparkling wine that has different levels of color from pink to red, that are just good alternatives for the other sparkling wines that you drink usually when you go out for an aperitivo or even with in pairing with food. So I leave it a bit. I make it depend a bit on who I have in front of me to focus more on the one or on the other. But I'm very, very proud of what we are doing and where we are based. So that should be very clear.
As you should be. So, Sebastian, I want to switch gears a little bit. You and I met through Frank Cornelissen, one of the producers in our portfolio with whom we've worked for quite a while, and I believe that you guys have a special relationship. Could you just talk about that for a moment?
Definitely, yes. Frank is my second wine father after my own father. I know Frank since I was a little kid. And when he still lived in Belgium, he was a good friend of our family. When the doorbell rang at 11 p.m. or at midnight, I knew it was Frank that that arrived. And then I knew they were together with my father. They would talk about wine and music until 4 in the morning, even if it was a weekday. So I did everything not to go to bed in those days. And that's how I remember Frank when I was a little boy. And then when I started to embark on this idea of starting a project, I contacted him because at that time he was already he was on the Etna since more than 15 years. And it's actually a very funny story. In the beginning, he did everything to convince me not to do it because I think he wanted to test me whether I was motivated enough to do it, because he gave me really all the arguments why not to do this step, leave the job you have and go into the winemaking. But then I said, based on that email, I said, let me come over to the Etna, and we had a very incredible day together there, and we ended up giving a big hug, and he said, I'm going to give you a hand. So since then, he's my let's say my consultant or my friend. He has lived through all the stages that I'm living through now. So it is important to have somebody close that to say it in his words, he's trying to make me avoid making the mistakes that he made, although I'm making a lot of mistakes as well. So I'm very stubborn at some points, even though they told me not to do it. I might do some things, but anyway, that creates a good relationship between ourselves. So we have a good the bond has become stronger and stronger over the past years with all the difficulties and everything, but he's still very much my SOS phone number.
That's right. You've got quite a good consigliere on speed dial, and Frank. So tell us a little bit about your approach, your philosophy when it comes to viticulture and winemaking.
Yeah, to start with, it was very clear from the beginning that we would do everything within the organic standards, as natural as possible, as to say. So everything where we can, we do manual work or mechanic. There is absolutely no systemic chemicals, neither in the vineyard nor in the cellar. So we do pruning, we do selection, so we do also green pruning, we do green manure technique, not to just to feed the ground in a natural way without having to give real manure. We are very careful of putting the plants in what we believe in a good equilibrium. So we do some selection also on the clusters. We do some selection on the leaves. And then in the cellar, we decided, especially the first years, the first 2 years, we only made red Lambrusco, so which is really the Grasparossa style, the old style, but in 2 different methods. They are both bottle fermented, so we don't use pressure tanks. We don't use the industrial way to make it, but we use the champagne way, if you allow me to say that. So we made a rifermentato and an ancestrale. Which the difference between the two is that in one case, the rifermentato, you make a double fermentation, one in the tank where you make a wine that has 0 sugars left, and then you add to that wine, in our case, you add back the must of the same vintage to have again sugars and yeasts, natural yeasts in there, to start a second fermentation that happens in the bottle. While the ancestrale is a single fermentation that starts in the tank, and then we bottle the wine when fermentation is not finished, and we let it finish in the bottle. So again, it goes under pressure. It does the last part of the fermentation in the bottle to make a sparkling wine. And that one we disgorge after a year. So it's the 2 traditional bottle fermentation methods that are very old. And we applied them on our red wines, and then we made, since 22, we also make a rosato, rosé, in the ancestrale method. So that is a bit in short how we work from the organic standards in the vineyard and in the cellar, and what we try to propose as end products.
So thanks for that, Sebastian. And I remember, speaking of the rosato, something that we talked about when we had dinner a few months ago now in Verona was that you have elected not to put Lambrusco on the label of the rosato, but you do on your reds. Could you talk a little bit about that decision?
Yes, well, it's actually to give everybody the possibility to choose what they find important, in the sense that the red ones are the really traditional Lambruschi. They are just made in 2 different ways, so rifermentato or ancestrale, as I just said. And they are the let's say the 2,000-year-old tradition of the Grasparossa, if you want, the Grasparossa vinification. With the rosato, I wanted to explore the possibilities to make from that same grape varietal, a blanc de noir, if you want. But it's still, if you would look at the bottle, it still has it seems like a very loaded rosato, because I was so impressed always about the Grasparossa when we squeezed it or when we pressed it. The color that came out of that grape was not white, as it usually happens with black grapes that become, for example, Pinot Noir in a Champagne. They have some color, but they are still on the tone of more white wine. Has that deep pink color. So we started to do direct pressing of whole clusters. And yeah, we started to do our own experiment with it, and it's from there that the rosato was born, with a 10% Trebbiano cut in there, just to give a bit that touch of acidity. So actually, it does not enter into the classical schemes of the Grasparossa Lambrusco. It's more, maybe more. It is more likely to a Sorbara Lambrusco, but I cannot call it like that, so because it's made from Grasparossa. So it's both that and the fact that I wanted to give and show to the market also that we are just focusing on, or trying to make very good, genuine quality, high quality sparkling wines, with or without the name of Lambrusco.
And it's delicious. We can't wait to introduce it to the market here. So, but getting back to the reds for a moment, I remember you saying once that it was just devilishly difficult to make Lambrusco, because you're navigating the challenges of making red wine and also sparkling wine. You have tannin, you have acidity. So tell me a little bit about how that feels. Is there poetry there? Is there more pain or more pleasure? What is it like to make a sparkling red wine?
That's very nice. I think there are 2 aspects to that. It's a good question, because there are really 2 aspects to it. I think there's a technical aspect, which is tannin and gas or CO2 combined, they actually amplify each other. So trying to find a good balance between the tannical part of a red wine and the bubble structure, the amount of gas, the amount of pressure in your bottle is a challenge. I think, but that's my personal opinion, that is one of the reasons why they moved to the industrial techniques that allowed for correction, adding sugar, adding or making a bit more soft the tannins up until the bottling, that they could intervene, that one can intervene better and have a more standard product in the end, because of those challenges. That is the technical side of it. The poetry side is, like I said before, Lambrusco in general is a wild grape family, and I noticed that constantly also in the cellar. It's a varietal that can smell very nice, cherry-like in the morning at 9, and at 11 you come back and it starts to go into reduction. So you need to really stay on top of it. It's like a wild horse. You need to keep the reins on and constantly in your hands. And that is I find that very challenging, very nice as well to achieve good results. But I think it's a difficult grape varietal, beautiful but difficult, and it is the combination of, as you said, two techniques that are not the easiest in the wine business. So I find that a very very big paradox. I think it's very difficult to make a good one, but it's one of the cheapest wines as well. So I find that a big paradox in the business, in the market.
Paradox really is a great word, I think, to describe Lambrusco. So I want to get back to something that you mentioned earlier. You were talking about disgorgement, and I've noticed that you are a man with excellent analogies. I love that picture that you just painted of the grape being a wild horse. But you've talked about disgorgement before, which you use for your rifermentato as sort of removing a veil from a statue of Venus. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. It's the ancestrale that is disgorged, not the rifermentato, but
Sorry,
the
misspoken.
No problem, Larissa. Yeah, I use that analogy a lot because it's there are a lot of people that, especially in the natural wine business, that have not a problem, but that are not so keen on disgorging because it's another intervention on a wine that is already bottled, and they like a wine or a sparkling wine being on the lees and having the yeast still in there and so on and so forth. There are a lot of theories about that, but I think when it becomes too much, it hides the potential of the wine. If it's too yeasty, if there are too many lees. So I chose to do a slight disgorgement, properly, just to the analogy I use is exactly that. If you put a veil, a white silk veil on a statue of Venus, you will still see a beautiful woman with beautiful shapes, but you don't see the details. If you remove that veil, you will see the same shapes and so on and so forth, but you will not have to look for it anymore. You don't have to look for the details. So that's how I always describe disgorging a wine. You don't do it to disgorge it because you like disgorging. You do it to reveal its details and its potential and its finesse, its nuances. And it's exactly also the reason why I do disgorge the ancestrale and I do not disgorge the rifermentato, because the rifermentato only has the deposit in the bottle of the second fermentation, which is I find it acceptable up until now. It might change in the next vintages, but I find it acceptable. In the ancestralia, I have so many deposits that it becomes difficult to find the finesse and the nuance. So I choose to remove the veil and go for a dégorgement à la volée on those bottles.
Okay. So let's talk about vintages. I know that you do put the vintage on the front label of your bottles, and you seem to really embrace vintage variation. And it's always fun to talk about, how one vintage has varied from another, in your words, with you. And obviously, this is different. It's different from what we see in Prosecco, in Cava, certainly with non-vintage champagne. So tell us a little bit about how you think about vintage variation, and why you decided to really sort of communicate front and center what the vintage is of your wines.
Yeah, that's an important. You touched on an important point. It's been a choice together with Frank also, that we said if we want to show that we are making real wine, we need to accept that one vintage to another is different. So yeah, I started to do that from the start and continue to do that, and believe that is the good way, because I really cannot guarantee to the market the same wine from one vintage to another if I do not intervene chemically or with products that I don't want to use. So it has been a choice that, for example, this year we have less sugars than last year. So I will not add sugar to be at the same level of last year, which in sparkling wine is very important, because it's also related to the potential of the pressure in the bottle, if you want. So we make wine in an artisanal way, and that means that every vintage, every year is different. But also I want to show that as a winemaker, I change and I learn, and I've learned so much from every year. I learn different things, having to handle and deal with different vintages, different weather conditions, so many things that are different, that I think it's a beautiful thing to present a vintage as a story rather than a standardized product that is the same. And if it would be the same, then I would have to use techniques that I'm not willing to use.
Yeah, and I think it's so beautiful, in order to be able to really have a narrative of an estate, of a region, to have exactly that vintage variation. So speaking of vintages, you just completed harvest. You mentioned lower sugars this year. Tell us about the 2024 harvest.
The harvest in itself was very challenging, in the sense that we were the weather was not that great, so we had to interrupt a lot of times the planning and change. But that is harvest. That had nothing to do about that. I was not super convinced in August, September of the quality, because we had a very hot summer as well, and so maturation was not very homogeneous on the clusters, and so I was a bit in doubt. I was not sure what would come out of it, but now I feel a bit more at ease about it, having tasted what we have in the tanks right now, both the Rosato and the basis for the red. It's quite good, and maybe a bit less sugar, which in theory would give a bit less complexity, but maybe in this case it's not a bad thing. Maybe the wines will have a bit more tension, a bit more like 20, because that was the big difference also between 20 and 21. 21 we had a good chunk of sugars, more complexity, nice and round equilibrium. 20 was a bit tension, so maybe 24 will be a 20, but with more experience from my side. So that is what I can say about that right now.
So, Sebastian, one thing that I love to talk about all of our producers with is climate change. You mentioned higher sugars this year. So what are you seeing, and how are you navigating that? What are you seeing your peers doing in response to how the climate might be changing?
But I think obviously I don't have 100 years of experience, but I think viticulture is the main sector that you can see what climate change has done, in the sense, or climate change, the changes that have happened, in the sense that the period of harvesting is just getting earlier and earlier. If you look at the last 50 years, and if you listen to the old winemakers here in the region, we used to harvest in November, we used to harvest end of October. We are the beginning of October and all the harvests are done already. So that the mere fact that things are getting earlier in the year is very I think is very clear from one perspective. On the other hand, climate change for me is something that we also need to. We need to start deal with it. It's up to us to start dealing with it as well, and we need to look at varietals that can keep a bit more the acidity. We need to maybe move higher up. We need to see what we can do. We cannot just sit back and let it happen to us. We also need to proactively look at it and learn from it. But I can say to you, Larissa, and you know that we are 4 years into the business, and every year we had an unexpected big calamity. I don't know how to say it in English, but like a big weather event that has hit us. And if I talk about that with my colleagues, they say, but it's in 30 years we haven't seen a hailstorm like that, or in 30 years we haven't seen a frostbite in April. So yeah, something is happening, and we are taking it all in the last 5 years, all of us, not only our winery, but everybody around us. So yeah, things are happening. But it's also my conviction that we need to think about how we manage our vineyards. For example, with the green manure technique, leaving the grass a bit higher to keep the ground a bit cooler, stuff like that. It's all little things. Selecting better the leaves that need to do the photosynthesis and stuff like that. We need to prepare ourselves better for extremes. I think that is the key. The extremes are getting bigger and more violent.
That's right, more extreme weather events. So, Sebastian, I want to touch on a couple of things still, and I see that we're starting to run short on time, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We talked earlier about misconceptions of Lambrusco. What are the myths that you would really like to set straight?
But that Lambrusco is a real wine and not just a drink. So it is, if it's made in a proper way, it also has potential to age. It's nice to drink a Lambrusco of 2020 right now. It's something that we try to do, present our wines with a bit more of delay, just to show also the evolution. So that is for me a big misconception. Also, not all Lambrusco winemakers are industrialized. I'm not alone with this. There are a lot of I have colleagues, also young people that I see a movement starting, that not starting or continuing, because there are older people as well that are doing it very consciously, and trying to really present a high quality, nice to drink wine, which has a sparkle in there. I think that is the most important misconception I want to get out of the world.
I find Lambrusco to be so incredibly gastronomic and so food friendly. What are some of your favorite pairings? Do you have any kind of beloved food memories of just brilliant pairings with Lambrusco that you could share?
Yeah, definitely. I think the traditional ones are the tagliatelle al ragù, or the tortellini, or the crema di parmigiano, or any pasta with the crema di parmigiano. If you pair that with for example our rifermentato, it's very refreshing, and the bubble, actually they call it in Italian sgrassante. So to remove the fat, which I think they like to believe, but it's not like it removes the fat, but it gives that feeling that it removes the fat from your food. So even with pork meat, very very heavy dishes, a nice, a well-made Lambrusco is very nice, because it really gives you the feeling that it moves the fat away, let's say. But that is the traditional way to look at it. I'm very happily surprised and very happy that some markets are starting to combine, also in the north of Europe, with fish dishes, because it's actually very interesting to try with fish, because you have a red wine which has a bit of structure, but then you have that freshness with that bubble. So it's very, especially with fat fish or with lobster or with dishes like that, it's been a very interesting journey. Also I remember in Quebec, that the chef made, combined our rifermentato with a piece of lobster and a spuma. So it was incredible. So it's that really makes me happy when I see things like that happen.
That sounds fascinating. I would love to try that pairing. So imagine you have a crystal ball. Look into the future for us. What do you see ahead for Lambrusco? Where's the region headed?
If we all pull together in the same direction, I think we can be what Chianti and Barbaresco was 30, 40, 50 years ago. And maybe and my kids will see that there will be at least a part of the niche in the market that accepts Lambrusco as a very high quality wine if it's made in a certain way. That doesn't mean that the other Lambruschi cannot exist still, but they will always be considered as a cheap alternative for the good stuff. So I think there are stories enough in all the wine regions in the world of regions that are under appreciated at one period in time, and then with people starting to work good in an honest, again, in a genuine and honest way, and then hopefully quality will prevail over all the rest.
Yeah, I think that there are good times ahead for Lambrusco. So, Sebastian, I think we're nearly wrapping up here, but I wanted to just leave you with kind of a bigger question. What are you trying to achieve with your wines?
I want people to find some of our personality, to see what kind of genuine people we are as well, and needs to be an honest. And when you drink it, you need to have the feeling that it's good, honest, and genuine. And I have some, I'm a very big music lover, so my ultimate objective is to get the balance and the equilibrium that you find in a cello suite from Bach, for example, or Pink Floyd, Shine on a Crazy Diamond, stuff like that. You know, that if I can give the feeling with my wines to people that they feel with music or with that kind of music, then I can be happy. Obviously, there's also, I would like my family to be able to live from this and be happy with it and so on and so forth. But I'm trying to achieve and make something that is in balance, that has equilibrium, that is surprising, that has tension, just like that music that I just described.
Yeah, a righteous wine, just like the righteous music of David Gilmour, right? I think you just saw him in concert too, no?
So I saw him, and I saw it together with my son, his first concert. It was very nice. It was very, exactly. That is what I want to achieve. What David Gilmour did to us, I want to do for other people.
I love that. I love that. Well, Sebastian, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate your time today. Stevie and team, thank you for the support.
Wow. I know, Larissa, we have come to a close because we've ran out of time, but I know you had prepared, I see 30 questions on your show notes, so we couldn't get to all of them, but hopefully we can get another chance pretty soon. And just before we close, Sebastian, I just wanted to let you know that I think you're friends with Isabelle Legeron.
Yes.
And she will be coming to Verona, of course, in November, but she's organizing a small raw wine inside Vinitaly next year. So maybe you can participate. It's just a day. It's a small walk around. And I think Frank might be coming as well. I mean, he's of course part of Vinitaly as is, but hopefully we'll get a chance to taste your wines also very, very soon with all of our Italian wine community members at Vinitaly International Academy, like Larissa. What a great show today. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us. And who knows, maybe we'll go to see Sebastian very soon. You never know. We're very close. We're in Verona, so you never know.
You're more than welcome.
Okay. Thank you so much. Great job, Larissa.
Thank you. Thank you, Stevie.
Ciao,
Thanks,
ragazzi. Alla
Sebastian.
prossima.
Swirl, sniff. Sniff.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.